Hello, my name is MP Laurel Collins, and I am the Member of Parliament for Victoria, and I'm here today with MP Barron and MP Zarrillo, and we are talking about a bill that is going to extend the benefits for people with disabilities. For too long in Canada, people with disabilities have struggled to access the benefits that they're entitled to. What this means is that people are struggling, oftentimes below the poverty line, struggling to put food on the table, to access transportation, to have their basic needs met. This bill would make it so that people going for provincial benefits would automatically apply or be eligible for the disability tax credit, for the Canadian disability benefit, and for disability pension. This move has been long called for by disability advocates. Many people in my community, including incredible members of the disability community like Mark Schuler and Steve Palmer, have been advocating for years for this change. Added bureaucracy, added visits to the doctor, added time trying to apply for benefits that you're entitled to is unfair. And the Liberals and the Conservatives before them have not been committed to making sure that people with disabilities can access the supports that they need. It's been years since the Liberals acknowledged that this was a problem, said they're working on it, said they're listening to the disability community, but they've failed to act. And the Conservatives continue to ignore the needs of people with disabilities. We're here today to fight for disability justice. And I'm going to pass it over to the NDP MP, who is our critic for disability rights, Bonita Zarrillo.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to MP Collins bringing this very important bill forward. As she said, many in the disability community have been unable to access federal benefits. One, because the barriers are in front of them, and two, because the government has not done a good job of making sure that they even know about these benefits. This bill is an opportunity for people in provinces, territories, and even First Nations that are able to access benefits and then have them automatically accessed federally. Persons with disabilities already face an ableist society. They already face many, many barriers in front of them, and the federal government for years has continued to limit their access to benefits. I appreciate so much this bill coming forward because, as MP Collins said, it comes directly from the community. It comes directly from disability advocates that have said this is not fair. So as we look down on the Canada Disability Benefit, which we know is woefully inadequate at $200 a month, the bare minimum that this government can do is to make sure that everyone that is eligible or should be eligible for that benefit can get it. MP Collins' bill will make that happen. I appreciate so much the work that she did, but also the work that the advocates in her community did and across Canada did to make sure that this could happen. And I'll pass it back to MP Collins.
And I'll take any questions.
So does this bill automatically qualify people for federal programs, or does it have them automatically apply for those programs?
So it makes them automatically qualify. So what it would be is if you qualify for a provincial program, so you've gone through that process, you've gone to the doctor, you've filled out the form, you've gotten acceptance from your provincial program, it means that you do not have to go through any of those steps for the federal government. You're automatically eligible. So we've heard from so many people in my community, but also in communities across Canada, that those added steps are barriers. It's hard to even know the process and to know how to apply for the disability tax credit, which then is the eligibility requirement for the Canada Disability Benefit as well. And so this would cut out those steps for people with disabilities. It means that that redundancy would be eliminated, and it means that more people could access the benefits that they deserve.
One of the major barriers as well, as I understand it, is that people who are below the poverty line aren't necessarily filing their taxes, and therefore don't qualify for all of these programs. Would that eliminate that requirement as well?
You do need to file your taxes for, at least in British Columbia, filing your taxes is a requirement to access a lot of these benefits. And so that still would be something that people would need support with. And I know all three of us work, and our staff works very hard to support people, both to file their taxes and then also to apply for these benefits and to raise awareness about the existence of the benefits in the first place.
The dental program that's being expanded to include people with disabilities also uses the disability tax credit as a barometer of who should be able to access those services. And so how urgent is this in terms of being able to access that program in the sort of 6-month period that it's going to be available to only people who access the tax credit?
Well, I think this issue is really urgent for people with disabilities. It's not only the disability tax credit, which is a lifeline for a lot of people. It's also the Canadian Disability Benefit, which is woefully inadequate, but it still will make a difference for people with disabilities. That extra $200 a month, it should be more, but that is definitely needed right now. And then when it comes to the dental plan, this is a program that makes such a huge difference in people's lives. People have gone years without accessing the dentist. I remember door knocking in 2019, and I door knocked on someone who told me that they were in immense pain. They were someone who has a disability, they're living with disability, they can't afford to go to the dentist themselves, and there are so many people in this situation. We've heard from dentists who are taking in patients who haven't been to the dentist in a decade or more. And when that happens, it impacts your health, it impacts your well-being, it impacts your ability to live your life. And so ensuring that more people can access this program, ensuring that people don't have to go through multiple hoops in order just to get the benefits that they deserve, this is incredibly important work.
Do you have a sense of how many people this bill would impact and what the relative cost would be to the federal government given the disability benefit and the dental program that is just getting underway?
So this is something that the former minister in 2021, Minister Qualtrough said that they were working on, and that they were going to be transparent about how many people are being left out of the disability tax credit, how much it would cost the government. But the government hasn't come out with that analysis. And it's disappointing when we have heard from the disability community that this is a vital step that needs to happen, that we had a minister who stood up and said that she's heard the concern from the disability community, that they're working on it, but it's been 3 years now. And we are putting forward this bill today because the government hasn't acted, and they continue to fail people with disabilities.
MP Bonita, I wanted to ask you as well about the benefit. When faced with the criticism regarding the benefit, the minister often says this is the single largest line item in the budget. That's kind of the line she's been going to. It's not strictly true. I wonder what you make of that response.
Well, I think over time we've seen over and over again how the Liberals do announcements. They do PR announcements, but those announcements aren't actually action on the ground. And I think that's why this bill is so important, because this bill is forcing their hand on promises that they've made to Canadians. And talking about this being the largest budget item, they forget to say over years. And second of all, they have not kept with the spirit of the legislation on the Canada Disability Benefit on this one. They have not listened to Canadians. They have not followed their own promises of nothing without us. And definitely this appears to be just another announcement.
I'm sorry, I'm monopolizing this press conference. What are you hearing from folks with disabilities who are hearing the minister's responses to this criticism?
They feel absolutely left behind. They feel a breach of trust has happened here. There was a lot of goodwill around the Canada Disability Benefit. There was a lot of trust in the government. The government asked for that trust. They received it from the disability community. The government has broken that trust, and it's not the first time.
It is a lot of money. It is a large item in the budget, even if it's not the largest. What is required to fix this program? Is it even more money?
I think what's required is to go back to the legislation. The government needs to go back. The Liberals need to go back to the legislation and follow the guidelines of that legislation. This is legislation. It's law. And the government can't make their own ideas of what they'd like to do. They need to go back to the legislation. They need to fulfill their promise to the community that they are going to do that work in collaboration with them. That's what they need to do.
We will now take questions from reporters on Zoom. Nous allons maintenant prendre des questions des journalistes sur Zoom. Mark Ramsey, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I'm just curious on the disability benefit, given that the Liberal government has already put forth the funding for the next 5 or 6 years, I think, with the disability tax credit as it is, as the current funding mechanism, what do you expect them do you expect them to support this and kind of change kind of their funding plan, especially given that you've had time to negotiate this and before deciding to vote on the budget and nothing kind of changed. So what do you kind of expect them to do in response to this?
Well, almost every time that we've put forward a sensible plan to support Canadians, we've had to force the Liberals into taking action. It's disappointing that they haven't done this already. This is something that we are going to be pushing the Liberals hard to fulfill their promise to address this issue. But what am I expecting from the Liberals? I'm expecting to have to push them into doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just wondering kind of, how would you respond to, I guess, criticism that your government did end up still supporting the budget, which included the benefit that you are criticizing today. And even though you did kind of say that it was one of the sticking points, you did negotiate and you weren't able to get any concessions, it seems. And now you're turning to a private member's bill to try to make the benefit better. So how would you respond to criticism on that?
I mean, I think this is what we've seen from the Liberals, is that they want to do half measures. We are going to keep pushing them for more. We're going to keep pushing them to support Canadians. We're going to keep using our power in a minority parliament to deliver for Canadians. It's what my community sent me to Ottawa to do, and it's what we're going to keep doing.
And if I may just ask one more question, have you had any talks with the Liberals or any of the other parties about this bill and whether anyone plans to support it?
Well, we've heard Liberals up in the House of Commons talk about acknowledging that this is an issue. They've responded to our questions in the House, saying that they have heard the same thing from the disability community, but we haven't heard a response on whether they will actually make this change.
And sorry, actually, let's just last one. Can you weigh in on kind of the new data that was released by Minister Kamal Khera's office last week? It showed kind of that only about 20,000 something people will be lifted out of poverty because of the disability benefit. And it also acknowledged that there have always been concerns about the disability tax credit and there weren't actually that many people who wanted it to be the mechanism for the disability benefit. Could you address that? And this goes to anyone.
This goes back to what we said. The government, the Liberal government's very own advisory committee said, don't use the disability tax credit, and the government didn't listen. This is a problem with the government. They do not listen. They do not take the action that they're asked to take. And as I said earlier, this is an absolute breach of trust that they haven't followed through on the fact that there was a recommendation made by their very own advisory committee.
And maybe just to add, I can only, given that they know the issue with the disability tax credit, given that they know that this is a problem, and we have presented this as a solution, but they have failed to act, I think, you can only assume that they do not want a large portion of people with disabilities to access the benefits that they deserve. And when you have a government who spends $35 billion on buying and building a pipeline, but won't spend the money to lift people with disabilities out of poverty, I mean, that's pretty appalling.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci.
Thank you.